Welcome to Starbound. My name's Aram, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Freyren and Remike. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now, let's get into today's story. High Praetor Canal's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the sterile, recycled air of his command bridge. The colossal Draconis dreadnought, Hegemony's will, hung in silent judgment over the verdant world the locals called Viridia 4, a frontier pearl, ripe for the taking. His lustrous, gold-flecked scales shimmered under the ship's internal bioluminescence, a subtle shift of anticipation rippling through his powerful frame. Tactical data, crisp and sterile, flowed across the holographic displays that surrounded his command throne. "Status report," he hissed, his voice a low rasp that carried the absolute authority of 100 conquered systems.
"Kinetic bombardment of orbital defenses complete, High Praetor,"
reported Panthea Vexia, her own emerald scales a stark, beautiful contrast to the bridge's muted tones.
"The satellites are dust. The electromagnetic pulse has been deployed. The human colony's electrical grid is neutralized. Their primitive communications are in chaos."
Canal's inner eyelids, translucent and protective, nictitated in deep satisfaction. The Draconis hegemony had perfected this stratagem across the Orion arm. Sever the head, cripple the limbs, and the body will fall. Disable their precious technology, strike under the cover of their self-imposed darkness, eliminate the leadership, and accept the inevitable surrender. It was a formula as old and reliable as the predatory instinct that burned in his twin hearts. "Their military response?" he pressed, though he already knew the answer.
"Scattered and panicked. As predicted, they are utterly dependent on their electronic systems. Without them..."
Vexia's muscular tail gave a dismissive swish against the deck plating.
"They are nothing more than soft-skinned primates with chemically propelled projectile weapons. An evolutionary dead end."
The High Praetor studied the thermal imaging of the colony below. New Haven, they called it. A single, sprawling settlement nestled in a wide, defensible valley. It glowed with residual heat, a pathetic beacon of life in the encroaching twilight, but no coordinated defense patterns emerged. It was perfect. The prey was blind, deaf, and huddled together in fear. "Deploy the First Fang Legion," Canal commanded, a cruel smile gracing his lipless mouth. "Target their central command structure. The Bastion, their data calls it. Without their command, they will devolve into terrified, manageable herds."
"Yes, High Praetor,"
Vexia hissed in reply.
"Glory to the hegemony."
"Glory to the hunt." Drop pods like obsidian tears shed from the heavens screamed through Viridia 4's atmosphere. Inside each vessel, a squad of Draconis warriors checked their plasma casters and flexed their taloned hands in eager anticipation. They were the scions of Draconis Prime, a world of brutal jungles and scalding plains where only the strongest, most cunning predators survived. Evolution had bestowed upon them scales harder than most alloys, reflexes that made the fastest mammals seem sluggish, and senses that could track the faint heat of a heartbeat across a kilometer of dense foliage. Centurion Korg felt his pod impact the rocky plateau overlooking the New Haven Valley. The hatch hissed open, bathing him in the dim, alien light of a setting binary star. His thermal vision immediately painted the world in a vibrant tapestry of heat gradients. And there, carved into the surface of a massive cliff, the human military installation glowed like a festering wound. "Pathetic," he growled to his second, Jack Stir. "They build their fortresses into the rock, yet they bleed heat like a gutted herbivore. It is as if they wish to be found.
Their evolution coddled them, Centurion.
Jackster agreed, his own plasmacaster humming with charge.
Imagine a species that required the taming of fire simply to endure the night. How did such weaklings ever crawl from their home world's gravity well?
Korg signaled his legion forward. 300 Draconis warriors, the pride of the hegemony, moved across the rugged terrain with the fluid, predatory grace of a single organism, their movements synchronized by subtle clicks and hisses, an ancient battle cant. They reached the massive blast doors of the bastion without encountering a single human sentry. "Breaching charges," Korg ordered, a sliver of disappointment dulling his predatory zeal. He had hoped for at least a token struggle, a show of defiance to whet his legion's blades. The explosion was a deafening roar that ripped the reinforced durasteel doors from their moorings as if they were paper. The Draconis poured into the mountain complex, their thermal vision instantly locking onto the bright, panicked heat signatures of fleeing human personnel. "Remember the briefing," Korg broadcast over his legion's private comms, his voice a low rumble. "We require the command staff alive for interrogation. All other prey is expendable. Let the hunt begin." They swept through corridors clearly designed for the smaller proportions of humans. Their own 7-foot frames had to stoop to pass through doorways. Emergency lights flickered on. Backup generators, Korg noted with contempt. Even in their final moments, the soft skins clung to their need for artificial light, unable to embrace the purity of darkness. They found the first pocket of resistance in a wide logistics nexus. 24 humans in drab military fatigues, armed with their primitive projectile rifles, huddled behind overturned supply crates and makeshift barricades. "Surrender, primitives!" Korg called out in the guttural, accented English he'd learned from intercepted transmissions. "Your defeat is inevitable! You cannot—" "Good Lord, is that a cosplay?" one asked. The other humans sounded annoyed. "We're in a military base, Chuck. I don't think they're here for a furry convention." The human eyed the Draconis. Scaly convention? Whatever. Open fire!" The humans opened fire. Korg almost laughed. A hail of small, high-velocity metal slugs sparked and whined as they ricocheted harmlessly from his natural armor. His warriors didn't even bother to take cover, simply striding forward as the humans emptied their magazines. From behind the barricade, one of the humans shouted, "Hey, you see that? It bounced right off! Bill, you owe me 20 credits!" The futile defiance was almost charming. Several humans, seeing the pointlessness, broke and ran. Others kept firing until their weapons clicked empty, their faces masks of disbelief and frustration. "Enough of this charade," Korg said, a profound sense of boredom settling over him. He raised his plasmacaster, the weapon's focusing crystal glowing in angry crimson. That's when the lights went out. All of them, even the emergency backups. The darkness was absolute, a perfect, silent void. Korg felt no concern. His thermal vision remained flawless, painting the terrified humans in brilliant shades of orange and red against the cool background. If anything, this would make the culling easier, more intimate. "Advance," he ordered, a predatory grin spreading across his face. "They have trapped themselves in their own blindness." But the heat signatures weren't behaving like panicked, blinded prey. They were calm, still, controlled, and they were smiling? He could see the faint heat bloom of their upturned lips. "Welcome to our house." A low, calm voice echoed from the human barricade. Another voice, female, chimed in from the side.
"Don't mind the mess. We're renovating. You'll make nice wall mounts.
The low and calm voice sent a chill down the Draconis' spines. You thought it'd be so easy to come here and fuck with us, huh? Dominate us like the big, tough bullies you think you are. The voice chuckled darkly. Well, you've got another thing coming. Humans don't just roll over and let what we love get ripped away from us. We protect what we love. You're about to learn that the hard way.
Surrender!
Korg roared.
We will take control of this colony and then this planet. To fight back means only more suffering.
Korg laughed, despite himself.
It'd be kinder for you all to shoot yourselves rather than put up what feeble resistance you have.
A haunting chorus of hysterical human laughs filled the Draconis' ears. Then, the thermal signatures simply vanished. All of them, simultaneously, as if they had been snuffed out like candles.
What?
Jack Stir hissed from beside him.
That can't be. Nothing can mask a biological heat signature so completely, so instantaneously.
A sound whispered through the darkness. The soft scrape of a boot on concrete. Then another, from a different direction. Then a third, from above. A cheerful whistle echoed softly down the hall. A jaunty, terrifying tune.
Defensive circle,
Korg ordered, a cold tendril of true unease coiling in his gut. This was not in the tactical manuals.
Maintain full thermal scanning. Report any anomalies.
Centurion,
One of his warriors called out, his voice tight with confusion.
I am reading multiple thermal signatures again, but they are wrong. Too hot.
Korg focused his vision. The warrior was right. Small, intensely bright heat signatures were appearing all around them, floating in the air, stuck to the walls, scattered across the floor. They looked like decoys, he breathed, the realization dawning a second too late.
They're using thermal decoys too.
The first warrior didn't die from a silent, professional shot. He died with a wet, thunderous crunch. A human had dropped from a ceiling conduit directly on top of him, driving a massive, powered breaching hammer into the Draconis' skull. The warrior's head imploded, spraying bone and brain matter in a sticky cone. The human, a brute of a man, grunted with satisfaction.
Home run,
He stage-whispered into his comm.
Contact!
Jack Stir shrieked, loosing a blast of plasma into the oppressive darkness. The bolt illuminated the corridor for a blinding split second, revealing the human standing on his dead comrade, giving Jack Stir 2 middle fingers before the darkness crashed back in. Another warrior shrieked as a figure materialized from the shadows, wielding a weapon that looked like a crude buzzsaw on a pole. The improvised weapon bit deep into the Draconis' side, spewing golden green blood and viscera as it chewed through scales and armor.
Told you this would work!
The human yelled gleefully over the roar of his weapon.
Return fire! All directions!
Korg roared, but his legionnaires were fighting blind. Their plasma bolts lighting up the darkness in strobing, nightmarish flashes that revealed only their own dying kin. In one such flash, Korg saw a human using a downed Draconis as a shield, firing a shotgun over his armored corpse. The buckshot, heavy tungsten pellets, slammed into another warrior's face at point-blank range, turning his regal head into a crater of mangled flesh and shattered bone. In the next flash, a warrior was yanked off his feet by a cable around his neck, hoisted into the air to dangle and choke, while 2 humans below placed bets on how long he'd last. One of them slapped a sticky bomb onto the struggling Draconis' chest and patted it.
Tag, you're it!
He chirped, before kicking off the wall and vanishing as the bomb detonated.
They can see in the dark!
A warrior shrieked, his terror palpable before a voice whispered directly in his ear.
Peekaboo.
A monomolecular blade slid between his ribs and severed his spine. He collapsed, a paralyzed marionette with its strings cut.
How is this possible?
Korg bellowed, firing at a flicker of movement.
They are mammals. They require light to see.
A voice spoke, calm and amused from directly behind him. Oh, buddy, you have absolutely no idea what we are. Korg spun, his claws extended, but there was nothing there. Instead, his gaze fell upon the 3 warriors who had been his personal guard. They hadn't been killed. They'd been disassembled. One was pinned to the wall by multiple lengths of rebar, still twitching. Another had been pulled halfway into a ventilation shaft, his lower half missing. The last looked like he had been put through an industrial meat grinder. The sporadic plasma fire was creating a terrifying strobe light effect now, each flash revealing a new tableau of abject horror. Proud Draconis warriors, the scourge of 17 star systems, reduced to panicking prey, screaming and dying at the hands of laughing, joking monsters.
Fall back!
Korg screamed, his disciplined mind shattered.
Retreat to the entrance! Back to the light!
But as the terrified survivors turned to flee, the massive blast doors they had destroyed slammed shut with a clang of absolute finality, rebuilt from within. They were entombed. Suddenly, the emergency lighting flared to life, not at a flicker, but at an intensity that was blindingly painful. The Draconis, their eyes adapted for the nuances of thermal vision and low light, cried out in agony as the visible spectrum overwhelmed their optical nerves. In that shared moment of searing, crippling blindness, the humans struck as one. Korg blinked away the burning tears, his vision slowly clearing just in time to witness the gleeful, systematic annihilation of his command. He saw a human female, her face spattered with blood, slide under a stumbling Draconis' guard and disembowel him with 2 curved knives, whistling cheerfully as she worked. She saw the hulking human with the hammer, using it to methodically break every joint in another warrior's body before finally caving in his chest. And there, standing in the center of the abattoir he had created, stood a human military officer. He wore no special armor, just a standard-issue uniform, and was calmly wiping Draconis blood off his boot with a rag. He looked up and offered a smile that made Draconis' blood freeze in his veins. "Centurion Korg, I presume," the human said, his voice casual. "Governor General Talmon Walter. Sorry about the mess. The kids got a little enthusiastic." He gestured with a thumb at the carnage. "Honestly, I've had tougher sparring sessions with my daughter, and she's 12. Talmon stepped forward, causing Korg to shrink back with fear and submission. "I wish I could say it's been a pleasure, but, well," Talmon chuckled. "It's barely been a challenge." "How?" Korg gasped, his magnificent legion destroyed, his own plasmacaster lying uselessly at his feet. He was the last one standing. You are supposed to be primitive, helpless without your technology." Walter laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh that echoed in the corridor of death. "Primitive. Pal, we got so good at killing each other that we had to invent sports to get our aggression out and keep things interesting. You're not an invasion. You're recess." He gestured to the silent, black-clad figures now emerging from the shadows, their armor slick with blood. "Meet the 1st Ghost Division, our welcome wagon." The thermal masking," Korg stammered, his analytical mind desperately trying to grasp the totality of his failure. "How was it possible?" "Cryocoolant suits," Walter said dismissively. "Standard issue." Frankly, we were expecting a bigger challenge. Did you really think we'd just roll over and die? More humans emerged from hidden alcoves and ceiling panels. They looked relaxed, some stretching, others joking with each other, their bloody weapons held with casual familiarity. They had the relaxed confidence that came with power and strength. "You are monsters," Korg breathed, the words tasting like ash. "No," Walter said, his smile finally fading into something harder, something ancient. "We're persistence hunters. Do you know what that means? It means we're the species that looked at the biggest, baddest predators on our homeworld and said, 'I bet I can wear that as a hat.' We're the species that conquered every single biome on a death world that has tried its best to kill us, and when we ran out of things to conquer, we got bored and aimed for the stars." He took a step closer, and for the first time in his life, Centurion Korg found himself backing away from a smaller, softer creature. "You came here as a legion, 300 individual warriors who happened to work together," Walter continued, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "But you failed to realize we are a hunting pack, 2 million strong in this colony alone. You didn't invade a colony, lizard. You kicked a hornet's nest the size of a planet." The lights went out again. In the Stygian blackness, Korg heard Walter's voice one last time, a calm, final whisper in the dark, full of malicious glee. "Welcome to Earth, Centurion, Viridia Colony. The tour is over. Now for the gift shop." Korg's scream was a thing of pure, primal terror. It echoed through the mountain fortress until it was abruptly, wetly cut short. Panthea Vexia watched the tactical display, a cold dread creeping up her spine that had nothing to do with the bridge's climate control. 6 standard hours had passed since the first Fang Legion had entered the Bastion. Not one of them had reported back. The life sign monitors for their entire legion were a uniform, dead gray. Communications malfunction, perhaps," suggested Tech Adept Hesk, though the tremor in his voice betrayed his lack of conviction.
A malfunction affecting 300 individual comm units simultaneously?
Vexia's tail lashed against the deck, the sharp crack echoing the tension on the bridge.
No, something is wrong. Something is deeply wrong.
The bridge of the hegemony's will hummed with a nervous energy that was utterly alien to the Draconis psyche. They were conquerors, not warriors. Their campaigns followed the elegant, brutal logic of predation. Shock, awe, submission. Viridia 4 was proving illogical.
Thermal scan of the surface,
Vexia commanded.
Show me the plateau outside the command center.
The holographic display shimmered and zoomed in. Where 300 brilliant Draconis heat signatures should have been arrayed, there was nothing but the cold rock of the plateau. Then, the image resolved further, and several bridge officers recoiled with audible gasps. Arranged with geometric precision were the bodies of their fallen comrades. Their cold, stiffening forms had been used to spell out 2 simple words, large enough to be read from orbit. Send more.
The Hybrator must be informed of this desecration,
Hesk whispered, his scales paling to a sickly yellow.
No,
Vexia snarled, her shame and fury warring within her.
We are the Draconis. We do not flinch because a few primitives get lucky. This was a single, prepared trap. They have shown their hand. Now we will show them ours. Deploy my personal legion, the Sun Eaters. I will lead them myself.
Panthea, with respect, Hess began. Perhaps a strategic orbital bombardment would.
Are you questioning my command, Tech Adept?
Vexia's claws, long and obsidian-sharp, extended to their full length.
No, Panthea. Glory to the hegemony. Glory to the hunt.
Vexia's personal drop pod slammed into the industrial sector of New Haven just after the second sun had set. She emerged with her honor guard, 50 of the hegemony's most battle-hardened veterans, each a survivor of a dozen campaigns. They were clad in the latest Draconis battle armor, powered exoskeletons that augmented their prodigious strength, equipped with multi-spectrum sensors and plasma casters that could melt a bunker door to slag.
Fan out,
she ordered, her voice crisp and clear over the comms.
Full sensory sweep, thermal, electromagnetic, acoustic, motion. These primitives will not surprise us with their parlor tricks again.
They moved through the eerily empty streets of the settlement in a perfect diamond-shaped formation. The colony appeared deserted, the only sound an emergency broadcast echoing from an overturned vehicle, warning residents to stay indoors. Vexia found it almost quaint, as if hiding behind drywall and plasteel would save them from the inevitable. From orbit, High Praetor Canal watched through Vexia's direct sensory feed. He saw what she saw, felt the thrum of her armor, the hum of her charged plasma cutter. He would bear witness to her glorious victory, a victory that would cleanse the shame of Korg's failure.
Contact,
one of her Sun-Eaters reported.
Large thermal mass, 3 blocks ahead. A significant gathering of the primates.
Numbers?
Vexia demanded.
Approximately 100, Panthea. They appear to be congregating in the open.
Canal's own confusion mirrored Vexia's. Congregating? During an invasion by a superior force? It defied all logic.
Advance with caution. Weapons hot.
They rounded a corner into a wide, open plaza lit by roaring fires and scavenged industrial drums. Dozens of humans stood around them, drinking from bottles, laughing, their faces illuminated by the flickering firelight. They wore rugged civilian clothing, heavy work trousers, thick jackets, worn boots. They carried no visible weapons. When they saw the 50 armored Draconis warriors enter their plaza, they didn't run. They didn't scream. They cheered and raised their bottles in a mock toast.
"Wow, look what the cat dragged in!"
one of them yelled, a massive male with a thick beard and arms like tree trunks.
"Took you long enough. The beer was getting warm."
Vexia strode forward, her powered armor emitting a low hydraulic whine. She leveled her plasma caster at the bearded man.
You will surrender immediately, or you will be atomized.
The bearded man laughed, a deep, booming sound that made Canal's scales prickle.
"Lady, we're just the welcoming committee. Figured you'd be tired after the trip. Have a drink."
You welcome your conquerors?
Vexia asked, her tactical mind screaming that this was a trap, yet her sensors showed nothing. No hidden energy signatures, no concealed heavy weapons, no technological threats, only unarmed, soft-skinned mammals.
Conquerors? Nah.
Another human chimed in, a wiry woman with her hair tied back in a practical knot.
We just call it a hostile takeover. You've got the capital, we've got the real estate.
She took another long swig from her bottle.
Look, we know the score. You got ships, we don't. You got plasma, we got pea shooters. Might as well have one last party before we're all sent off to the spice mines, right?
Despite himself, Canal felt a sliver of Vexia's tension ease. These humans were nothing like the specters that had annihilated Korg's legion. These were pragmatic, perhaps, defeated. The first attack must have truly been an anomaly, a desperate gambit that had spent all their resources.
Secure them,
Vexia commanded her warriors, her voice regaining its confident edge.
The High Praetor will want prisoners for.
The bearded human dropped his bottle. It shattered on the ferrocrete with a sharp crack that was shockingly loud in the sudden silence. And that was the signal. That was when Canal and Vexia learned what total warfare meant to a species that had turned entire continents into battlefields. The unarmed humans moved as one, pulling weapons from the loose folds of their jackets and from holsters strapped to their legs. But they weren't just projectile rifles. They were grenade launchers, shotguns loaded with strange munitions, and devices that lobbed canisters that hit the ground and erupted in a simultaneous, blinding flash of white light and a skull-shattering sonic boom. Flashbangs. Primitive, simple, and utterly, devastatingly effective against a species with senses 100 times more sensitive than a human's. Vexia's world dissolved into pure, white-hot agony. The multi-spectrum sensors of her helmet overloaded, feeding her a fire hose of contradictory, painful data. The sound wave hit her with the force of a physical blow, rupturing her delicate inner ear membranes. She screamed, falling to her knees, firing her plasma caster blindly into the cacophony. Through his own disoriented feed, Canal heard the roar of engines. Massive, wheeled industrial vehicles, heavy-duty mining haulers and cargo trucks with reinforced plows welded to their fronts burst from behind canvas tarps and through the walls of flimsy warehouses. Humans clung to the sides and tops of these roaring behemoths, whooping like mad things, firing heavy-caliber machine guns that chewed through Draconis armor at close range. A 10-ton hauler slammed into one of the Sun Eaters with apocalyptic force, crushing the Draconis and his advanced-powered armor into a mangled wreck of metal and flesh. The humans on board leaped off before the truck had even stopped moving, swarming the downed warrior not with advanced weaponry, but with sledgehammers, industrial cutting torches, and pry bars.
Formation!
Vexia tried to scream, but her voice was lost in the bedlam. Her elite warriors were firing in all directions, their plasma bolts carving molten scars into buildings, but the humans were a fluid, chaotic tide. They were everywhere and nowhere at once. Canal watched in abject horror as a feed from another warrior showed a small group of humans take down a Sun Eater with terrifying competence. One threw a smoke grenade, obscuring the warrior's vision. Two more flanked him, firing grappling hooks that latched onto his arms. A third used a jury-rigged EMP device to momentarily disable his suit's motor functions. As the warrior stood frozen for a precious 2 seconds, a fourth human ran up, slapped a magnetic explosive charge to his chest, and sprinted away. The resulting explosion tore the Draconis in half. The fight lasted less than 10 seconds. It wasn't a battle. It was a disassembly.
These aren't soldiers,
one of Vexia's warriors managed to report, his voice laced with panic.
Their tactics are undisciplined, chaotic. They're civilians.
Canal's blood ran cold. If these were their civilians. An explosion rocked the plaza as one of the human technicals, riddled with plasma fire, detonated in a massive fireball, taking 3 Sun Eaters with it. Canal watched as the human driver crawled from the burning wreckage, laughing, his face a mask of blood and exhilaration. Other humans echoed each other's war cries, and Canal realized with a dawning, soul-crushing horror that they weren't fighting for survival. They were enjoying this. This was sport. Humans found camaraderie and thrill in the challenge of the hunt. On another feed, he saw one of the humans, the wiry female from before, kneel over a fallen Sun Eater. She used a heavy-duty knife to pry open the dead Draconis' mouth, and with a set of pliers, expertly twisted out one of his long, serrated canine teeth. She held it up to the firelight, admiring it.
This one's a beaut,
she said to a companion.
Gonna make a nice necklace.
Her companion, meanwhile, was running a knife down the dead Draconis' arm. Scales are a bit scorched here, but the belly hides perfect. Could make a wallet out of this that'd stop a bullet. The wiry female wrinkled her nose.
The belly height is too gaudy for me. It looks like a 70s pimp wallet.
The male laughed. You're just jealous you can never have a wallet so functional and shiny. Your dog would chew it up in a week, or try to anyways.
Baxter does love his scaly chew toys.
They were looting his soldiers. Not for technology, for trinkets, for trophies. Like hunters field dressing a prize kill.
Fall back!
Vexia finally managed to order, half her legion already dead or dying. But there was nowhere to fall back to. The humans had turned their own settlement into a three-dimensional killing field. They attacked from rooftops, from sewer grates, from the windows of darkened buildings. They used the urban terrain as a weapon, funneling the Draconis into intersecting fields of fire, into dead-end alleys where heavy machinery was waiting to crush them. Vexia herself made it 3 blocks before the bearded man caught her. He dropped from the roof of a low building, his bulk landing on her back with enough force to send her sprawling. Before her suit could compensate, he jammed something into the delicate joint at the back of her helmet.
Thermite,
the man grunted, his voice a low rumble in her ear.
Burns at 4,000 degrees. Your fancy suit is good, but it ain't that good.
Vexia felt the painful, searing heat begin to build.
Wait!
Sorry, Lizzie, the man said, his tone almost apologetic.
You came to the wrong damn planet.
The thermite ignited. Through the sensory feed, Canal was subjected to Vexia's final, agonizing scream as her helmet systems failed and molten metal ate through her scales and into her skull. His last image from his trusted Panthea was a brief, blurry glimpse of the bearded human giving a thumbs up to his comrades before the feed went dead. High Praetor Canal ripped the sensory input crown from his head and hurled it across the bridge, where it shattered against a bulkhead. He stared at the tactical map, now a graveyard of gray icons. He had sent his best, his personal guard, and the soft-skinned primates had treated their destruction as a recreational activity. They had turned his elite soldiers into purses and good luck charms. The message was no longer a taunt. It was a promise. This wasn't a war, it was a cull, and the Draconis were the ones being culled. High Praetor Canal stared at the main tactical display, his magnificent golden scales seeming dull and lifeless in the cold light of the bridge. 8 fangs. 2,400 of the hegemony's finest warriors, including his own sun-eaters, all dead. The life sign monitors were a sea of silent gray, a monument to his catastrophic failure.
This is an insult,
he hissed, his tail thrashing with such violence that it scored deep grooves in the deck plating.
We are the apex predators of this galactic arm. We have subjugated 17 advanced civilizations.
High Praetor, Comms Officer Dex Val spoke, his voice barely a whisper, afraid to draw the Praetor's wrath.
We are receiving a priority transmission from the colony's Governor General.
On screen,
Canal snarled. He would face this mammal. He would see the face of the creature who had orchestrated this humiliation. The hologram flickered to life, showing the same human male from the Bastion, Talman Walter. He appeared infuriatingly calm, unremarkable. Average height, no natural armor, soft skin that would tear under the slightest claw. Yet, his eyes... Canal had seen those eyes before, in the reflective pools of Draconis Prime staring back at him. The eyes of a predator who knows with absolute certainty that it is at the top of the food chain.
High Praetor Canal,
the human said, his voice level. Governor General Talman Walter, I believe you've been making a mess in my backyard.
Mess!
Kanal roared, his composure finally shattering.
Your pathetic, dishonorable resistance has only delayed the inevitable. I have 10,000 warriors still aboard this fleet. I will turn your pathetic colony into a sea of molten glass from orbit.
Walter actually smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a wolf baring its teeth. No, Preetor, you won't. See, you came here to play checkers, but you've been in a game of three-dimensional chess from the moment you entered this system. And you've already been checkmated. You just don't know it yet.
Empty threats from a cornered, doomed...
Check your own ship's internal life sign sensors, Walter interrupted smoothly. Specifically your primary engineering decks, say levels 7 through 12. Kanal's twin hearts went cold. He gestured frantically at his bridge crew. Tech Adept Hesk's talons flew across his console, his emerald scales paling as the data streamed in.
Hi, Praetor,
Hesk stammered, his gaze wide with disbelief.
There are discrepancies. No life signs are registering in those sections. They have been silent for approximately 9 hours now. Those sections house my chief engineers, my FTL drive specialist, over 400 crew.
412 to be exact. Walter finished for him, his voice chillingly brutal. Were housed. Past tensed. Though I supposed housed isn't the right word. More like recycled. Another screen on the bridge flared to life, overriding the Draconis' control. It showed internal security footage from Engineering Level 7, time-stamped 9 hours ago. A Draconis maintenance worker was walking down a corridor, checking readings on a datapad. Then, between one frame and the next, he simply vanished, pulled upward into the ceiling with a speed that defied physics. There was no struggle, no sound, not even a flicker of the lights. He was there one moment, gone the next. Keep watching, Walter suggested, his voice laced with the detached interest of a biologist observing a specimen. The footage continued. A 3-warrior patrol entered the corridor, searching for their missing crewmate. They moved in standard formation, point, flank, and rear guard. A shadow detached itself from the other shadows on the ceiling. It was not a shadow cast by an object, it was the object, a flowing liquid darkness. One of the searchers looked up, his instincts screaming a warning, just as it descended. The camera feed dissolved into static for a single frame. When it cleared, only 2 Draconis remained, spinning in confusion.
Vortek,
one of them called out, his voice tight with fear.
Vortek, report!
The shadow moved again. This time, Kanal saw its form clearly. A human, clad in some kind of active camouflage suit that bent light around its body, rendering it a near-perfect void. It moved with a horrifying, multi-jointed fluidity, clinging to the metal ceiling as if it had been born there. The remaining 2 Draconis never saw death coming. One moment they were back to back, weapons raised. The next they were collapsing in neatly sectioned pieces, bisected by monomolecular blades that passed through their scales, armor, and bone as if through mist. We call them shadow dancers, Walter continued conversationally, as if he were a museum curator explaining an exhibit. 12 of my best teams are currently aboard your fleet. They've been here since you arrived. We launched them in stealth pods while you were so busy with your EMP theatrics. You were so focused on invading our home, you never bothered to check if we were already in yours. More screens hijacked themselves, displaying simultaneous feeds from across Kanal's fleet. In each one, a new horror unfolded. Draconis crew members dying in silent, inexplicable ways. One was dragged into a Jeffries tube by hands that seemed to materialize from the wall. Another was found hours later in the mess hall, his body carefully posed in a parody of prayer, a message written in his own blood on the table before him. Tag, you're it. Your dreadnought has a crew of 3,847, Walter noted. Well, had. My teams are running a little competition. Sergeant, what's the current tally? A female voice, crisp and professional, spoke from off-screen on Walter's end.
2,716 confirmed kills fleet-wide, Governor. Team Alpha is in the primary barracks. They say it's like shooting fish in a barrel.
You heard her, Walter said, his calm demeanor more terrifying than any scream. Over 70% of your command crew, dead or missing inside their own ship, and you never even knew we were here. Kanal's own bridge staff was backing away from the shadows now, their plasma casters raised, their tails twitching with a primal fear their species hadn't felt in millennia. On the screens, the silent slaughter continued. A Draconis weapons officer sat at his station, focused on his console. Behind him, a section of the bulkhead that had been solid metal for the ship's entire existence silently irised open. A shadow dancer slipped out. They had been waiting inside the very walls, motionless for hours. The human moved with the grace of a phantom, a thin, glittering wire held between two hands. The garrote was around the officer's throat before his brain could even register the touch. But instead of killing him, the human leaned in close to the Draconis' auditory sensor. "Boo," they whispered. The officer's shriek of pure terror was cut brutally short as the wire tightened. The human held the convulsing body until it was still, then carefully lowered it to the deck and slipped back into the hidden compartment, the wall sealing flawlessly behind them. "You see, Praetor," Walter continued, "when my ancestors discovered they weren't alone in the universe, it raised a terrifying question. What if we met something bigger, stronger, technologically superior? How could soft, weak humanity possibly survive?" He leaned forward, his eyes boring into canals through the hologram. The answer was simple. We wouldn't fight their war. We'd fight ours. We'd adapt, we'd learn, and we'd become the thing that monsters check for under their beds before they go to sleep. Because that's how we survived every other predator on this planet that is stronger and faster than us.
Bridge security! Full sweep!
Kanal roared, his voice cracking.
Check every shadow, every grate, every corner!
His royal guards spread out, but their movements were jerky, uncertain. They were looking in the obvious places. They weren't checking the truly dangerous ones, like inside their own bodies. Security Chief Malachor, the largest Draconis on the bridge, suddenly screamed, a high, piercing sound of agony and violation. He clawed at his own head, his talons gouging deep furrows in his scales.
It's inside! Something is inside my head!
He managed to rip his helmet off, his face a mask of terror and blood. Something small and metallic, no bigger than a grain of rice, crawled from his ear canal, its mission complete. Malachor collapsed, his nervous system shredded from the inside out by a microscopic assassin. "Nanotechnology," Walter explained helpfully. "A little gift from us to you, dispersed into your ship's atmospheric recyclers yesterday. Most of it is inert, of course, but when we send the activation signal..." He shrugged. "Well, you saw. Very effective." A wave of panic erupted as other crew members began to scream, clawing at themselves, succumbing to the invisible invaders in their own bloodstreams. But for every one who fell to the nanites, 2 more died to the silent figures that moved through the chaos. Kanal saw one clearly now. A human female, small even for her species, her face painted in disruptive patterns. She moved through the dying, panicking bridge crew like a dancer of death, a blade in each hand. Where she passed, Draconis died, their throats opening in fountains of golden green blood. She paused at the center of the bridge, surrounded by the corpses of his command staff, and looked directly at Kanal. She smiled. A flash of white teeth in her painted face blew him a playful kiss, and then simply ceased to be. Not invisible, not cloaked. One moment she was there, the next she was gone, as if she had been erased from reality itself. Quantum phase shifting, Walter supplied, his voice taking on the tone of a proud father. A bit of an energy hog, but worth it for special occasions. Like making new friends.
Monsters,
Kanal breathed, the last of his defiance draining away, replaced by a vast, empty horror.
You are all monsters.
Walter's expression hardened. No, we're humans. We crawled out of the primordial mud of a planet that tried to kill us every day. We fought ice ages, supervolcanoes, predators with teeth like daggers, and plagues that wiped out millions. And when we ran out of things to fight, we started fighting each other. We learned to hunt in packs. We learned to strike from the shadows. We learned to turn our greatest weakness, our frailty, into our greatest strength. It forced us to be clever. It forced us to be cooperative. It forced us to be absolutely, uncompromisingly vicious when cornered. He stood, his holographic image seeming to grow in stature. You came here thinking you were apex predators. You're not. You're just another bully who confused technological advantage with true evolutionary fitness. You can cross the stars, but you are still the same predictable lizards that crawled out of your ancestral swamps. The main lights on the bridge suddenly cut out. In the absolute, terrifying darkness, Kanal heard whispers, human voices, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once.
We own the darkness.
We own the light.
We own the spaces in between.
But most of all, the lights flared back on. Every shadow on the bridge now held a silent, black-clad human operative. They stood perfectly still, weapons trained on the few surviving Draconis. The lead operative, the female who had danced through his crew, stood directly behind Kanal's command throne.
We own you,
she finished, her voice a soft whisper in his ear. Kanal felt the impossibly cold, thin line of a monomolecular blade pressed against his throat. Call off your fleet, Walter's voice commanded from the hologram. Order a full and immediate retreat back to your territory. That's option 1. Option 2 is we kill every last one of you, take your ships, and come pay a visit to your High Praetor on Draconis Prime. We've already cracked your FTL navigation systems.
You can't pilot Draconis technology,
Kanal said, the words a desperate, hollow prayer. The female behind him laughed, a soft, musical sound that was the most terrifying thing he had ever heard.
Oh, sweetie, we've been living in your ship's computer core for 9 hours. Your entire network is based on a surprisingly primitive pheromone-based encryption key. We synthesized it from the sweat on your dead soldiers' uniforms an hour after they landed. We don't just know how to fly your ships, we've also written better software for them.
On the main screen, Walter nodded. The clock is ticking, Praetor. Leave with the crew you have left, or we will keep your fleet as war trophies. Either way, this invasion is over." Kanal's magnificent tail lay limp and defeated on the floor. All around him, the bridge crew, what was left of them, looked at him with eyes full of terror and pleading. The pride of the Draconis hegemony, brought to its knees by soft-skinned primates who treated genocide like a game. His voice was a broken rasp. "All ships, all fangs. This is the High Praetor. Disengage. Full retreat. Return to hegemony space now."
Good boy.
The woman behind him purred. The blade vanished from his throat.
Though I'm a little disappointed. I had 50 credits riding on you making us do this the hard way.
She sighed dramatically.
There goes my bar money.
She and her team began to melt back into the shadows they commanded, but she paused at the main view screen.
Oh, and one more thing.
She called back cheerfully.
Spread the word, would you? Tell the rest of the galaxy, Earth is under human protection, and we're always looking for a new challenge.
She winked, and then she was gone. As the crippled Draconis fleet limped away from Viridia 4, their numbers decimated, their pride shattered into a billion pieces, High Praetor Kanal stared at the beautiful, blue-green world receding in the viewport.
High Praetor,
a trembling tech adept asked.
What do we report to the hegemony? What do we tell them happened here?
Kanal was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollowed out, filled with a terrible new understanding. "We report the truth," he said, his gaze fixed on the innocent-looking planet. "We report that we were wrong. The galaxy is not empty. We have found another apex predator." He paused, the words catching in his throat. "They are called humans, and they think we are prey.